Paul in Woodinville, Washington, listening on KBCS. Hey, Paul, what's up?
How you doing?
Good.
You know, Neil's one of my favorite guests on the show because he always seems to just step in it in terms of, you know, he argued that, I bet the guy who's the Tea Partier who now thinks that maybe the Democratic Party's done more for him. He said, I bet he liked it when Reagan raised his military pay 25%. Well, I guess that was part of that. Raising the military was part of tripling the national debt because he didn't raise taxes to do that.
Right.
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 So, in other words, that jobs program was just a giveaway.
Yeah.
Now you compare that to the Democratic programs. Nobody ever paid, other than paying into Social Security, it didn't cost anybody else any money. How about Medicare? The same thing. All of the programs that the Democrats have set up have been self-sustaining. The Social Security hasn't added to the national debt. The Social Security Trust Fund is a creditor of the national debt.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's funny. And when these people like me argue for this freedom from government and the things they don't like a minimum wage, and this is when they're arguing for a time, I think like you were pointing out, 125 years ago, or actually 100 years ago to just after the Civil War and up until the New Deal, was the poorest time in America's history.
Yeah.
Most people were destitute.
Yep.
That's what they're arguing. But when they argue freedom from government, that's what they're arguing. In other words, freedom from us organizing to help ourselves.
Freedom to live in destitution.
And then just let the robber barons take over and do it.
Yeah, freedom to live in destitution. Freedom to, back to the old, couple of years ago when the Republican primary was going on, and Wolf Blitzer asked that question of Ron Paul. And the answer from somebody in the audience was "Let him die."
Let him die.
Freedom to die like a dog in the gutter. That's Republicans' idea of freedom for working people, but their idea of freedom for millionaires and billionaires is quite different. I mean, the Republicans just passed out of the House of Representatives, and now John Thune is leading the charge for it in the Senate. Republican John Thune, to cut inheritance taxes altogether on the wealthiest 2/100ths of 1% of Americans, about 1,000 families, 2,000 families at the most.
So that we can establish a true aristocracy, and so we really will have conservatism, and the classical conservatism where we have the Romanovs and the Bourbons and the Habsburgs.
Right.
That conservative.
That's what you have right now. I mean, the Romanovs were supporting political. Well, actually, they were political themselves. But how are the Koch brothers or Shelley Adelson or any of these other major players different from those kind of groups?
They're not. That's exactly when you read War and Peace, for instance. That's all about the 5 aristocratic families who had big influence on the monarchy.
I confess I've never read War and Peace. I was intimidated by its size.
Well, you got to keep living, so you just
yeah.
They talk about the founders find freedom from government. They founded the government. They founded the most comprehensive government in the history of the world. So to say that the founding fathers wanted freedom from government, I think is absolutely silly. Yeah. And the programs that founded, the democratic policies and programs that people have that we most people don't want to get rid of. Oh, and by the way, I was trying to think what was on the tip of my tongue here. I have to point out, and I've said it on this program, and I said it in my Social Security talk that I held a couple of weeks ago, all 4 of the cuts to Social Security that I said they wanted to do have now been articulated by Chris Christie and now Jeb Bush, which is cut benefits. Of course, the chain CPI was already in there, raising the retirement age, and all 4 of those have now been articulated. So I can say, everybody, I was right. That's exactly what they have in mind. And why do they want to do that, Tom? We know why cut. What the reason why they want to cut benefits is because why draw down on that big fat Social Security trust fund? you don't want to get rid of that.
Well, not only hang on just a second here, Paul. I think that they want to cut benefits because when they privatize Social Security, right now Social Security has enough money to pay all those benefits. But once they privatize it, once Jamie Dimon at J.P. Morgan Chase owns and runs Social Security, we got to they got to skim his salary off the top. They got to skim all the other guys who make millions of dollars a year off the top. They got to skim the advertising costs. They've got to skim off dividends to give to their stockholders. And so the only way that they can make that money, that pile of money, last long enough and be large enough to make that happen is to reduce the amount of payments that they're giving to people on Social Security.
Right, you articulated exactly what I was trying to say. Exactly correct. And everybody, please, when you talk about privatization, think about how would privatizing it bring in more money.
Right.
Well, there's only one way to speculate that could happen, and that is speculation. And what I mean by that is playing fast and loose with it as unsecured derivatives. And then your whole fund. And do you think even if they make profits and they make money on it, it's going to trickle down to you?
No.
You think you're going to get? And that's the way they'll sell it. Is potentially you higher Social Security payment than. And here's the other thing: if they invested in the stock market like that, if they invested in securities like that rather than Treasury bonds, what happens to a market that's constantly being sold off because 20% of it has to be sold off to pay benefits? Isn't that a declining market?
Yeah, that's at the very least it's a very unstable market. I mean, putting Social Security's money in the stock market, especially a couple of $1 trillion is nuts.
Insane.
It would be such a deforming event. I mean, in terms of how it would modify the stock market, and it would put all that money. But hey, if the Republicans can pull this hand off to Jamie Dimon and his buddies, the Social Security Trust Fund and the Social Security, those guys are going to make billions, and they skim money off the top of the money that they make and give it back to the Republican politicians in the form of campaign contributions and super PAC funding. So, I mean, they've got this thing down, Paul, and you know it as well as I do. They've got this down. It's a scam. Paul, thanks a lot for the call. Great to hear from you. We'll be back.